So good afternoon, everyone. We're going to do our OPT optional practical training workshop for our fall 2024. My name is Daniel Deck. I am an advisor at ISSS, and I'll let Jean introduce herself here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jean. I am also an advisor at ISSS.
I think you want to get started here?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, next slide, Mike. All right. So OPT stands for optional practical training. It is temporary employment that's directly related to an F1 student's major field of study. So eligible students can apply to receive up to 12 months of OPT employment authorization per degree level, either before completing their degree, that's called pre-completion OPT, or after completing their academic studies, which is called post-completion OPT. For students who are graduating this December, you will be applying for the post-completion OPT. And also note that OPT is authorized by USCIS, not ISS. ISS will recommend OPT in your CVIS record and give you an OPT I-20, which you will include as part of your application to USCIS. All right, next. So eligibility. OPT is a benefit of F1 student status. To be eligible for OPT, the F1 student must be enrolled at least full-time for 1 academic year. And also the student has not been authorized OPT at the current degree level in the past. So if you're graduating from a master's degree and you had OPT for a previous master's degree, then you're no longer eligible for OPT at this degree level. And the next is that you have not been authorized for 12 months or more of full-time CPT at this current degree level. And also note that job offer is not required at the time of application, but the employment during OPT must be directly related to your major. All right, next. Okay, types of employment. OPT employment may be paid or unpaid, as long as the unpaid work does not violate labor laws that are determined by the U.S. Department of Labor. Students are generally permitted to work for more than one employer during OPT, as long as each position is directly related to your major field of study. Students are also permitted to change employers during OPT. You will just need to notify us, ISSS, via IPEN, no later than 10 days after the start of the employment. If you have the information before starting new employment, you're welcome to update us as well. OPT employment must be at least 20 hours a week for post-completion OPT. If you hold more than one position, then the combined hours must be at least 20 hours a week. Okay, next. Okay, as previously mentioned, the position must be directly related to your major field of study that's going to be printed on your transcript. When determining whether or not a position is related to your major, you want to look at the position title, as well as the responsibilities listed in the job posting. And then you want to also pay attention to whether or not there is applicable coursework from your major field of study that is related to that particular OPT position. Because ultimately, if you are ever questioned by USCIS, you need to be able to justify with evidence the direct relationship between the position and your major. If needed, we recommend that you reach out to your academic program, alumni who graduated from the program, and also utilizing the resources compiled by the career services who can possibly help you with looking for employment related to your major. All right, next. Okay, so here is a quick glance at the OPT application process. We will now go over each step in more detail in the next couple of slides. Next. Okay, so for students who are graduating this December, at the earliest you could submit the application to USCIS was September 20th, which was 90 days before graduation. So this application window is open through the end of the 60-day grace period following the completion of your program. Just note that February 17th is the last day that USCIS must receive your OPT application. It's not the last day that you send it out or complete it, but although if you're doing it online, you will receive instantly. So February 17th should be the very last day that if you have to wait till the very last day, that will be the last day that you must apply, and it must be received by USCIS. Okay, next. All right, we're gonna go to the next one. Okay. First of all, complete an OPT I-20 request form in IPEN, where you will need to let us know when you want your OPT to start. Please note that once the requested dates are submitted to USCIS, you can no longer change those dates. So make sure that you give your best guess when you fill out the OPT I-20 request form. Before we send it out, or before you send it out to USCIS, we could still possibly change the dates, but once it's submitted to USCIS, those dates can no longer be changed. There will be an OPT pen processing fee, and then you will also have to complete an OPT tutorial before you can submit your request. The tutorial basically just an overview of what we're presenting today. Okay, and next. So DSO recommendation. So ISIS, when we receive your OPT I-20 request, we will review your request and then we will make the recommendation for OPT in CVIS and issue you an OPT I-20. The I-20 will be emailed to you, but you must print it out, sign I-20, and include a copy of this I-20 in your OPT online application to USCIS. Next. You must physically in the US when submitting the OPT application. You can be outside the US to request OPT I-20 from us. But once you're ready to submit the application to USCIS, you have to be physically in the country to submit. Okay. And so once we have the OPT I-20 issued, you will have to make sure that you submit the application to USCIS within 30 days from receiving your OPT I-20 from us. If you wait too long, if you wait 31 days, even just one day over, your OPT application will be denied. So make sure that you file your application as soon as you receive the I-20 from us. Okay, next. Okay, benefits of online filing. So in the past, students had the option of filing by paper, by mail, or online. Nowadays, it's just way more popular to do it online because you don't have to go to the post office. You don't have to get a stamp. You don't have to physically mail it out. You can complete the application online and pay for the application using a credit card, or debit card. No check, money order necessary. You also, while you're completing the online application, you're required to complete all the fields before you're even able to submit. So then this helps reduce the possibility of missing or complete a field that's with the wrong information. And then also, if you file it online, you get a receipt number right away, or even get a digital receipt notice right away that you can download for other purposes. If your application receives a request for evidence, you can also respond by submitting your response online instead of mailing out to USCIS. So these are the major benefits of filing your OPT application online with USCIS. All right, next. All right, USCIS adjudication. The current processing time for OPT is about 3 to 4 months. The time can fluctuate, but usually it's within 4 months from what we've seen from this past summer. There is an option for students to request premium processing for the OPT application. There is additional fee in addition to the application fee. The premium processing will allow the application to be adjudicated in 30 business days. If you decide that you just want to file the regular processing right now, that is fine. If later you decide that your application needs to be expedited, then you can choose to upgrade your application to premium at a later time. You will receive your case number from USCIS after filing the application. And you can check the status of your application by going to USCIS.gov. And once you file and while you wait for your OPT approval, you may not start working, or you may not even begin training or orientation of any sort with your employer. You have to wait until the EAD is received in hand, and also the OPT start date has reached before you can start working legally. In some cases, if you did not submit enough information, or you missed an important OPT attorney from past, or just a document that you missed, USCIS may send you a request for evidence during the adjudication period. So you just have to make sure that you respond in a timely manner. If you want one of your advisors, ISS advisor, to look at the RFE, would be happy to do so that we can, help you determine exactly how your response is supposed to be. Okay, next. Once you submit once you submit the application, it's approved. You get an email notification that the 765 is approved and the card is being mailed to you. Hopefully within a week or two from that email, you should receive the EAD card at the mailing address that you provided in your application. When you receive the EAD, you want to make sure that you complete an OPT reporting to upload that EAD into IPEN, so that we can also take a look at your card if there's any mistake, or if you have any questions about the card, it doesn't look quite right, then we can look at it with you and to further advise on the next steps. Next. I think that's Dan.
Yep, that's me.
All right.
Thank you. So Jean went over kind of like the application process. I'm going to kind of go over what happens once you get your OPT approved, STEM extension, and some other things like that. So Jean already kind of touched on this, is basically when can you start? So you need to meet these 3 criteria. First is that it's been approved. Second, that you have the EAD in hand. And third, that the EAD is current. So you've reached the start date that's been printed on the EAD. We really don't recommend you start your employment until you reach until you have all those 3 criteria met, because in some cases you may make assumptions, and then once you receive the EAD in hand, there may be other information on there that needs to be updated, fixed, or might be changed, and you may find yourself working without authorization, which is something you don't want. So once you have all these 3, you should be good to go. Okay, next slide, Mike. So now you've got your EAD, you're ready to start working, you need to report it. So as Jean said, you got to report it within 10 days, okay? And you do that by completing the e-form in your IPEN account. You need to update us with any changes of employment, so whether that's a new employment, ending employment, adding employment, anything of that nature. And then, of course, any change of status or finishing your OPT early. You have to let us know of all that kind of stuff. You should also notify us of your change of address, email, phone, we need to make sure all of that's updated in our system as well as your CVIS record as well. When you are applying for your OPT and it's approved, you will be getting another email from SEVP to open your student portal. This is optional. It's not something you need to do. And you can set it up if you want. It's a good way for you to kind of view the information that's active in your CVIS record with regards to your employment, to see what's current, any updates that have been made, stuff like that. However, even if you update the SEVP portal with your information, you still need to update us. So don't assume that if you've updated the portal on your end that you're done. You still need to update us. And just so you know, when you complete the e-form in your IPEN account and we update your record, that will automatically update the SEVP portal. So you don't need to do both. But do know that it sometimes takes a few days for it to show up. So if we receive an email from us saying we've updated your record and you log in real quick to your SEVP portal, it may not yet be updated. So just give it a few days and it will show up at that time. Next slide, Mike. Unemployment is always a question that we get asked a lot. So when you have your post-completion, your first year of OPT, you are given 90 days of unemployment, and that's total. So if you receive your EAD and it's valid, starting day one, that's when that clock starts if you don't have a position. So you need to make sure that you don't exceed that. And that's for your total first year over the first 12 months. If you exceed that, your F1 status is, pretty much no good, and you'll need to take actions accordingly. If you're still pending your approval, your EAD, your unemployment days will not start counting until that EAD start date has hit. Okay. And please make sure you do report that employment to us, because that's how you stop the counting of it. That's how you stop the counting of the unemployment days. Okay. Next slide, Mike, please. Travel. Travel is a big thing. So in certain cases, we do not advise that you travel. In certain cases, it's okay. So we're going to get into those details here. Next slide, Mike, please. So here are the situations that you can face. So before your program end date, that's going to be on your I-20, you can travel if you're still in your program, just the way you kind of do normally, even if the application's approved, pending, what have you. Now, once your program end date hits, we do not recommend you travel unless you have that EAD in your hand, because you will need it to get back. There are certain situations where it can be okay, but it's a very high risk situation if you find yourself traveling outside of the United States after the program end date and your OPT has not been approved. Okay. Next slide, Mike. And here are the risks. So first of all, if your F1 visa is expired during that time, you may not be able to renew it because they'll say that the program end date has hit. If your EAD is issued during that time and it gets lost in the mail or it's approved, either way, you would need to return with that EAD. And if you're traveling, you're returning and you don't have that EAD, it's going to be an issue. Also, you may receive like an RFE or a denial while overseas, and you need to be able to respond appropriately and in a timely manner to those requests to the government, and you may miss deadlines resulting in the denial of your OPT. At the end of the day, if you need to travel, I do recommend reaching out to your advisor so you can have that specific situation worked out. We can advise you accordingly. But again, if you're just as a general basis, if you don't have that approval, you don't have your documents, and it's past your end date, try not to travel if you can. Next slide, please. However, if it's approved and you've got your documents, you should be good to go and good to travel internationally. Obviously, you want to discuss that with your employer if you are employed, because you can't just pick up and leave. Now you're an employee. So you obviously want to work that out. Otherwise, you may find yourself out of a job due to failure to be present. When you do re-enter, you are required to have 4 documents with you, which is going to be your passport, your F1 visa, the I-20 with the travel signature, and make sure it's within 6 months. Travel signatures are only valid for 6 months while you're on OPT, and the EAD card. So those 4 documents are required. We also recommend, if you can, bringing a proof of employment in the form of an offer letter or some other kind of letter that your employer would be able to provide. It's not required, but it can help you when you're re-entering the United States under OPT status. Next slide, please. And so if you have a STEM major, you are eligible for the STEM extension. So everyone that applies for OPT can only apply for the first year. Everyone goes through the same process, whether you're STEM or not. However, if you are on STEM, you can apply for the STEM extension, which is a up to 2-year extension. You do this while you're on your post-completion OPT. Okay, not before. Next slide, please. So let's look at the eligibility. So obviously you need a STEM major. That's going to be on your I-20. If you have 2 majors, as long as one of those are STEM, you're STEM eligible, but you need to make sure that position is related to the STEM major. So that would be the qualifying job. And then of course your employer assistance, which your employer basically agrees to go through with the STEM, help you with the STEM extension, because they actually need to fill out some forms for you. So when can you apply? Similar to OPT, is 90 days prior to the expiration date of your OPT, but you cannot apply for the STEM extension beyond your OPT expiration date. So it's the day after your OPT expires, you're done. You cannot use your STEM extension anymore. You have to do it before your OPT expires. So how do you do it? So it's similar to your initial OPT. You have to go in, you have to go get your I-20. And how do you do that? You go into IPEN, you request it, but you're going to also need to have what's called a form I-983. It's a training plan, so you complete a lot of it, but you need to go over all of that with your employer. And then your employer, an official, whether it be a supervisor, HR, whoever at the company, can help you sign that, and you'll need to submit that in IPEN along with your application for the I-20. Then you submit it similar through online, which is what we recommend, same form. And you, of course, wait for the adjudication of that. Once you're on STEM, you do have a few more requirements other than the normal reporting. Every 6 months, you have to do a reporting with ISSS, and they require like confirmation of employment, address, and then of course completion of portions of the I-983, like the self-evaluation and final evaluation. Then of course, anytime you change a job, change address, you need to let us know that as well. Next slide, please. So while you're on OPT or STEM OPT, you may be offered H-1B. If you want it, you're welcome to throw your name into the lottery. Your employer will help you with that. We can't really comment on any H-1B processes that are independent of or separate from Penn, because that is under the employer's discretion. But H-1B does have benefits for your OPT, which is called the cap gap extension. So because most H-1Bs start on October 1st, if your OPT expires before that, after July 1st, with that approval, your OPT is automatically extended, which is the cap gap extension, until September 30th. And then the next date would obviously be October 1st, when you would be on H-1B. And that allows you to continue working after the OPT expiration date. I do recommend getting an I-20, an updated I-20 with this information on it for your records, and as well as your HR at your company may require this as evidence that your cap gap has been applied to your record. That is for a change of status. If you're going to be consular, you need to work that out with your employer on how and when they want you to go do your H-1B processing overseas. If there's any issues with your H's, like a rejection, denial, revocation, then of course the cap gap is automatically terminated and you'll need to, make plans accordingly. Next slide, please, Mike. All right, let's look at some frequently asked questions here. What do we got here? My OPT I-20 is more than 30 days old. May I use it to apply for OPT? No, absolutely not. 31 days, they will absolutely deny it. They will absolutely deny it. So what you need to do is you need to contact your advisor and say, I missed the 30 days. Can you help me can you help reissue a new OPT I-20? And we will help you do that. Next one. Do I need my EAD before beginning work? Yes. Yes. That can be frustrating, especially with some of the slow deliveries in the mail. I understand it, but if you really want to be safe, please do wait for that EAD to arrive. Next one. Can I change my OPT request dates? You can before you submit it to the government, to USCIS. Once you submit your application to USCIS, you cannot change those. But if you still have not sent your I-20 in the application to USCIS, you can certainly change your OPT request dates, and you can do that by notifying your advisor, and we'll help walk you through that process. Next one. Can I cancel my OPT if I have not used it? Tricky. You certainly can. It's a risky thing to do if you're going to be withdrawing it. Like if you've already submitted it, that's a really risky thing. But if you have not yet submitted it to USCIS, you can certainly cancel it. You just let us know. I'll let your advisor know. And again, we'll walk you through the process and what that means for your status or future OPT going forward. Next one. I already used my 12 months of OPT in one program. Will I be eligible for another 12 months in another program? It depends. If you are going up an educational level, so let's say you finish your undergrad degree, you used your OPT, and you're going into a master's program, you would be eligible after 2 semesters or completion of that program for another OPT. And then if you finish your master's and you go on to your PhD, you'd be eligible again. But once you use that OPT at a certain educational level, you cannot use it again, and you cannot go down a level to gain any more OPT. Next one. What is my immigration status while on OPT? You are still F1 status. You're still a student. So that's why you still have access to IPEN, your advisor here at Penn, because you still need to answer to us because you're still considered a student. And that's so you still have those requirements under F1 status. You still have your I-20, you need it signed and things like that. Okay. So another one? Nope. Final thoughts here. We do recommend reading our website. If you have any questions, make sure you plan ahead so that you're not missing deadlines. You're reading your materials, looking at your I-20, review all the documents, keeping copies of all immigration documents. I can't tell you how important this is. I think I get emails from students all the time saying, oh, I need all my I-20s, I don't have them, or my visas. Please, please, please keep copies of everything, because you never know when they're going to be requested, and when and if they are requested, you want to be ready to present them. And then, of course, always read your emails that we send you, reminders, notifications, updates, stuff like that, because it's really, we are trying to help you and inform you of different things that may be coming your way. Is there anything else, Mike? Any other? That's what I thought. So obviously, you know how to get in touch with us. We have all the social media up here, our website. You can find out your advisor through, I think, your IPEN. You can, it has our email addresses there, so you can always reach out to us via email. We have appointments every week. We have drop-in sessions every week as well that, we invite you to use all the resources that we have. And of course, scan this QR code. You can let us know how we did, any feedback you have for us. In the meantime, I think we're going to pull up some questions that you've been dropping in the chat here. Pull that up.
We can alternate
That's
if you
fine.
want.
That's fine.
All right, so we received, right, as of now, 9 questions. So Dan and I will read each questions and try to answer as best we can. There are some questions I think are repeating, so we will just, if it's a question that we have already addressed, we will make sure to say that. So the first question is, if my visa is expiring towards the end of my program, can I still apply for OPT? How would that work? If you're talking about the visa stamp in your passport, that visa can expire. You don't need a valid visa to apply for OPT. You will need a valid passport, valid OPT I-20 in order to apply for OPT. And then obviously, if you will be traveling while you're on OPT and your F1 visa expired or will be expiring at the time of reentry, you will need to apply for a new F1 visa so that you can re-enter the US on OPT. Okay.
Next one. Many thanks for your clarification. I'd love to know, does anyone only can apply for one OPT in their life? How to extend the OPT day for the STEM program student? Not sure I totally understand the question, but I think, speaking to what we discussed earlier, is you get one OPT opportunity per education level. So if you were to start your undergrad, you get an opportunity, then you have to go up to master's for another, and if you want to go on to your PhD, you get another opportunity. STEM extension is specific to STEM majors, which it would be on your I-20, and you apply for that while you're on your OPT. But make sure you do not wait until that OPT is expired, because you're no longer eligible for it. That answers it.
Next question, can we leave the US after submitting to USCIS during the processing timeline? Yes, as Dan mentioned, before your program end day, you can absolutely travel outside the US and re-enter before December 19, which is the graduation date. So for example, if you apply now and you need to go somewhere outside the US for Thanksgiving for that long weekend, that's absolutely fine, because you will be returning before your graduation date. I want to go home and not be stuck in the US for 3 to 4 months. Go through and you don't need to be in the US. Like mentioned, if once your OPT is pending with USCIS, we recommend that you stay in the US until the case is approved. However, if you must travel before program completion, that is fine. You want to carry a receipt notice, passport, and everything that can prove your F1 status. But once OPT is once graduation come and goes and your OPT is still pending, we recommend that you stay put in the US until the application is approved and EAD is received. Okay.
It takes 4 months for normal processing, but I can only apply 90 days before graduation. What do I do in the months gap between graduation, getting the EAD? Can I still be at Penn? So long as you apply for OPT within the window, so the 90 days before, all the way up to the 60 days after your program end date. So there's that window of 150 days. So long as you apply within that window and the application remains pending, you are permitted to remain in the United States. Don't work during that time. Absolutely not. But make sure, that the application remains pending. If you might want to check every once in a while to see if there's an RFE, if it's extended beyond that. But yeah, as long as that application is still pending, you can stay in the United States.
Sorry, I was muted. Next question, how could I receive an EAD if I move out of my apartment after the end of the school year and don't have an address? So we often tell students that if you know that you'll be moving in 3 to 4 months after filing your OPT application, you need to find someone in the US, whether it's a friend or a professor or someone that you know at the academic department, someone with an address that can receive mail for you in the next 3 to 4 months. Because if your address if you move and USCIS does not have your current mailing address, the post office will have to return your OPT approval notice as well as the EAD card back to USCIS because they cannot just leave it here. They're required to return to USCIS if the EAD is not deliverable. So if you will be there for the next 3 to 4 months, that's great. If not, try to find a friend or friend who isn't graduating yet, who has a valid address for a while, and then you can absolutely use a friend's address when you apply for OPT.
Follow up after the new information. Can I return with an expired F1 visa and EAD card, or do I have to apply for a visa renewal? You got to get a new F1 visa. Like, I mean, I'm thinking visa revalidation, which they can do, right, Gene, with EADs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into visa revalidation, but basically the basics are adjacent countries, you should be okay, but I recommend reaching out to your advisor to get the specifics on that. But in general, you will need to obtain a new F1 visa stamp in your visa if you're traveling internationally while you're on OPT.
Right. All right, next. My future employer told me that they will be preparing an H-1B cap petition that would happen in April. H-1B would start October. You mean October 2025? Would I be eligible for lottery if I graduate May 19? You are definitely eligible for entering the lottery next spring. Once you are selected, then your employer will be able to file your petition starting April 1st. As long as you have the educational credential, credential or the degree that's needed for the position for which they're sponsoring the H-1B. Yes, so you can have OPT and H-1B going on at the same time. That's absolutely fine. I hope I answered that question.
If I receive my EAD card before the start date, will the 90-day unemployment start? No. The 90 days only start once your EAD becomes valid. So even if you receive it, like you apply for your OPT in March and you're lucky and you get it in April, it won't start until that your requested start date hits.
Okay, next, what is the program end date for the spring 2025 semester? So the program end date is May 19th, 2025 for students graduating in the spring semester. Okay.
I will graduate next spring and like to go back to my home country for the summer before starting work. In my case, it seems that I have to apply for the post-completion OPT this semester to have EAD card and OPT at 20 before going home and return home before the start date. Can you confirm if my understanding is correct? EAD, is the start date of the EAD set, or can we choose when we'll start off the completion of your program? Okay, hold on. So you're graduating next spring, so you can't apply until next semester then. You wouldn't be able to apply this semester. You can, what was it, February? Do you remember, Gene? February 19th?
Something like that, 90 days before May 19th.
Right. So it's late February. That would be the earliest you can apply because of your graduation in May. So that would be the earliest that you could apply. since if you're planning, here's my thing. If you know you're going to be traveling and you know you want OPT, apply as soon as you can because you want to get that application to the government as quickly as possible so that they can take a look at it um, as quickly as they can, and then you can get all your documents. So when you want to travel, you should have your EAD ready in your hand. So when you travel, you're good to go. Um, there was more to this. Is the start date of the EAD set? So you request the start date of your EAD when you do the I-20 request. The start date needs to be within 60 days of the program end date. It can't go beyond that. And typically USCIS will honor that. The only times that they really don't typically is if it takes them longer to adjudicate that. So let's say they don't pick up your application until August. We saw some of that this year. You would get a later start date then because that you would otherwise be accruing unemployment. That's not really your fault. Can we choose when you start after completion program? Yeah, so that's you would pick that. Yeah, I hope I got all that. Mute, Junior, mute.
Apologize. Um, my program end date on my F1 visa is May 30, 2025, and my job start date is September 1st. What am I allowed to do in the 3 months? So if this is a spring 2025 graduate, your I-20 program end date will be adjusted to May 19, 2025 when we process your OPT. When you apply for OPT, you can choose to start OPT anywhere between the day after graduation and the very last day to start OPT, which will probably be July 18, I'm guessing. So if you choose July 18th, then between July 18th and September 1st, you will be accruing unemployment. If you want to find a temporary job that qualifies for OPT employment, then you can absolutely report that to us. Just have to make sure that that temporary job is at least 20 hours a week. Does not have to be paid, but must be directly related to your major. Is it possible for an EAD card to come after? Yes, it is very possible for the EAD to arrive after your graduation, given how long the application is currently taking for USCIS to process. So you just have to wait and do not work for that EAD to arrive. And then if that start date has reached, then you can begin working after receiving the EAD.
Can you talk more about applying for pre-completion OPT? I'm in a 2-year master program STEM major. Would it be possible to apply for pre-completion OPT to there's a lot going on with that question. It's a lot more complicated than kind of the question lets on. For that, I do recommend reaching out to your advisor to work out the different options because CPT might be in play here. Pre-completion OPT might be in play. There's different things that may be available. So for that question, I recommend reaching out to your advisor to work out the specifics of that. I'll take the next one because I didn't really answer that one.
Oh, okay.
Can you apply for a new visa during OPT if the visa expired before? Yes. Yeah. While you're on OPT, you can always renew your F1 visa. I would just make sure you have your EAD when you do that.
So next question, if I'm doing a reduced course load in my last semester as an F1, would I be eligible for OPT, I'm assuming? The answer is yes. Reduced course load in your last semester, basically just we're telling immigration that you only need less than 3 CUs to graduate. So with that, you are still maintaining your full-time status, and therefore you will still be eligible for a post-completion OPT after graduation. Okay. Next.
Let's see. Oh, actually, I would be able to continue lab work STEM after graduation when OPT application is still pending at USCIS. So if you've graduated, no, you got to wait for that EAD to show up. So this is a situation where you may want to coordinate with the lab or the professor or with whomever you're working to see how you would want to work that out if there would be a gap in employment due to delays in adjudication, or you just may want to request an OPT start date the day after your graduation. Because once you graduate, if you don't have your OPT, a valid OPT, you got to stop working.
Right. All right, follow-up question, the student graduating in spring. Yes, you can enter the H-1B lottery as long as you have the degree requirements that the job requires. So if you have an offer, if you have the employer, then definitely have a conversation with your employer about the lottery process. Okay. All right, next.
For graduate students, when to apply for OPT, it's dependent on thesis defense state. So if you're a master's student graduating, I mean, you would just apply just like everyone else according to those dates. If you are a PhD student and you're looking for like your dissertation, um, uh, so your OPT based on completion of coursework and before your defense and graduation, that can get a little difficult to explain, especially kind of in like the general OPT setting we are in now. I would also recommend reaching out to your advisor regarding that because there's a lot of kind of specific details for that kind of situation that you would want to work out there.
Next question. If my visa expires when I'm applying for an EAD, I will have to renew my visa when I travel back home. Will the new visa stamp only be valid for a year? Because it seems a lot of interviews if I am renewing for my OPT later. So when you renew your visa while on OPT, it's likely that the consular officer will give you a year visa that will end at the end of your OPT. We've also seen students receiving 5-year visa while they're on 1-year OPT. So it really depends on the consular office that you go to. You can always reach out to the consulate and ask if they're able to, answer questions over phone or email. Ask them, what is the standard, I guess, procedure? How do they, if they're able to answer, sometimes they'll say, no, you will end your visa on the last of your OPT. So it depends. So answer is it depends on the consulate where you go.
Graduating next spring, May 25. Already chose a date with my future employer to late August 2025. Would that cause a problem since it's 60 days after the program end date? So long as if it's going to be, if your start date is going to be in August, I would request the latest start date possible, which I think, like Jean said, is July 18th. If I'm not mistaken, it's 60 days after the graduation, after the program end date. And that way you are accruing the least amount of unemployment time possible. So that's what I would do because you have 90 days.
All right. Okay. A few more questions. Does OPT allow working remotely from abroad for a few months? OPT generally is designed for you to work in the US. That's the purpose of OPT. But working temporarily from abroad, for example, if your company is sending you overseas to work on something for a month or two, that will be fine. As long as you're able to prove that you are not primarily stationed outside the US during your OPT, because then CBP could question why do you even need OPT if you are working from outside the US, because you don't need OPT to work from outside the US. So just make sure that the work is temporary, it's approved by the employer, and that you're able to show that the majority of your OPT time will be spent in the US.
See, master student with SP2, MSSP program with a compulsory internship requirement in summer 25 in order to graduate. Do I need to apply for CPT before applying for OPT? So if I'm reading this correctly, this coming summer, you would have your internship, which would, I can say with a lot of certainty, that would be CPT because it's part of your program. So you would need to apply for that in the spring semester once you're able to register for the requisite course. And then, of course, once you're ready for graduation, if you're doing post-completion OPT, then you would follow the same rules with the 90 days before your program end date to apply for OPT. So they're separate from each other, these two processes.
Last question, how much is OPT? The application fee for USCIS is $470. There will be an internal pen processing fee of $205 currently, which has to be paid before you can actually submit the application, or not application, submit the OPT I-20 request in IPEN. And also, if you choose to file your application using premium processing, that's additional, I think, 1,685. 85,
Yep.
yes. Yeah. All right. So that concludes our presentation today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This presentation is recorded and will be posted on our website shortly after the presentation. Feel free to reach out to your ISIS advisor if you have further questions. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.